Imagine that you're playing chess with an opponent that you can't see, but they can see you and they know every move you're going to make even before you can make it. That's what it's like navigating life with your unconscious self. Today we're going to venture into deeper shadow, into what core energetics calls the lower self. And the lower self happens when the parts of us that were unlovable, unacceptable, get pushed into our unconscious. Once they're there, those lost parts don't just sit quietly. They have a darker influence on everything that we do. So we're going to explore how that happens, what the cost is energetically, and why catharsis alone isn't the same as bringing these lost parts back to the conscious self for healing. Then we're going to look at something that's curiously hard to define, our higher self, our creative source, the purpose of this journey. And it's surprising to know that parts of our higher self also end up in shadow, often because we're ashamed of them and because they were just too vulnerable to survive unprotected. So welcome back to The Crack Between the Worlds. I'm Mark Wald, and my partner in time today is again Ken Goldberg, MD. Ken is a preventative medicine specialist. He's a teacher, a therapist, and he's the director of the Northwest Core Energetics Training Program. So Ken, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to, this is such a fun conversation. And we've been wading and we're about waist deep into the unconscious self. And today we're going to go underwater. We're going to dive into the lower self, and one of my favorite subjects. And we can talk more about that later. But I thought I might start today off with a case study that we can sort of apply lower self and mask to, and also help people understand how this process works and unfolds.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring somebody in the room that I worked with. This is a number of years ago. And this woman came in to see me, and she was having trouble in relationships. She had a boyfriend. It wasn't going well, and for a variety of reasons. But in conversation with her and talking to her, it became clear that she struggled with boundaries. And in further looking into this, it was very clear that her mother was a fairly invasive mother. Her mother was a very controlling person, managed things about her. And so as a daughter, as a young woman, as a young person, she learned to submit. She learned to just
not have boundaries, give in to her mother.
Exactly. And so having this conversation with her, I began to realize, okay, this is really about boundaries. And this is in our first session, which is a little bold, but she seemed really ready to like do something. And she was probably late 20s. And she really desperately wanted help. So I decided to do an exercise with her. So we stood up, and I had her in one corner of the room and me in the other. And I told her, here's the rules. I'm going to walk towards you. And when I'm where you want me to be in relationship to you in this room, I want you to stop me. Just hold up your hand and say, stop. She said, okay. So then I waited a moment. I said, are you ready? She said, yes. And I started to walk towards her. And she really let me come fairly close, like closer than you and I are now. And I watched her body as I got closer start to tighten up and prepare for the invasion. And then she finally said, stop. And so I asked her, so how is this for you? And she said, oh, this is fine. I'm okay. Yeah. So she had normalized this. And so then I said, well, let's try something. Ask me to take 2 steps back. She said, oh, okay, take 2 steps back. And then I did. And she couldn't hold back a giggle. It was as if the 4-year-old in her, it felt like 4-year-old to me, started to giggle, and she held her hand up and kind of did this thing of giggling. And And then I said, great, let's do this again. So I went back and we did it again, and we kept doing this dance and then finally she got me to stop about where she felt comfortable. And she kept giggling.
Farther than we are.
Yes,
now.
yes. I was like, I took 4 steps in and she stopped me, and that's good. And it was profound for her. She was giggling and smiling and just like, oh, this is great. And so we did it again. And this time when she stopped me, I took another step forward. I crossed the boundary. And again, her body starts to tense up and she feels like, oh, here it comes. And then she goes, please take a step back. And it was very like she was gathering everything she had to do this. Mm-hmm. And so I took a step back and she just smiled. She goes, you know what? Stand over there. And she got me to stand in another part of the room. Mm-hmm. She was realizing she had the capacity to have boundaries and to control the situation. And she just started laughing. Yep. So this was a first attempt at helping her get a sense of boundaries and what she's capable of. Mm-hmm. And in a way, the way that I see these things are that our unconscious self is like it's like casting a spell on our body. Yeah. We just sort of freeze up. Mm-hmm. And this happens in that when you can get people to move through that, you can begin to break the spell.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great example. You know, we all have boundaries, and sometimes our boundaries are too strong and too far out, and sometimes they're too weak and too close or not strong enough. And I love the example because it depicts so much of what this work is about. Mm-hmm. Right? Just the fact that we have a physical distance that's comfortable to us, which is an energetic perception, right? And it's personal. You might be, I've experienced it where I go to other places. I was in India and I'm sitting in the train station reading a book, and somebody peers right over my shoulder at my book. Like, wow, they're comfortable moving right into my physical space. That was part of their culture. And, you know, took me a while to get used to that. I thought they were being invasive, right? Well, in my experience from the culture I grew up in. So, and this person that you talk about, right? She was taught at an early age having boundaries wasn't going to be okay. It didn't work with her mother. It wasn't acceptable. Mm-hmm. So it became an unconscious process of not having boundaries. She probably wasn't aware of this in her relationships, how it was affecting them, how boundaries were being perceived at all.
Right.
You know, some people have some sense of it by the time they get to see us, but often they don't even think about it really. And that process of making it more conscious, oh, I'm aware that I could have boundaries, right? What a revelation, right? It's so important because, of course, without boundaries, we don't function very well. That example of the eggshell or the cell wall, if the eggshell breaks, the organism dies. It needs that boundary. Mm-hmm. Boundary has to be permeable, has to let the warmth from the chicken through to warm the egg so that it can grow, or the cell has to let in nutrients, but it can't be completely dissolved, that boundary. That's not a functional system. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the different layers of the energetic defense process. We were talking about the mask as the outermost layer, this distortion in thinking, how our thoughts are distorted, like, oh, it's not safe to have boundaries, or the world's not a safe place. And that to the extent your person thinks, oh, it's not safe to have boundaries, or people won't love me if I have boundaries.
Right.
She won't have them. Right. So then she becomes aware, oh, I actually could have them, and maybe people could love me and I could still be lovable, and it's appropriate and healthy and so on.
And so there's the mask, right?
There's the mask.
I'm going to let you in because it doesn't do any good to stop you, and I won't get love. So I'm going to that's the rationalization.
And the notion of I can't have boundaries.
Right.
Because it's just not okay. You won't love me. And so on. We have an explanation, rationalizations, and justifications, so on.
Right.
Well, at a more fundamental level, we have a layer of defense that it's not perhaps the best terminology, that we call the lower self. It's not a pretense, not like the mask is. It's not a who I think you want me to be or
Right.
how I want to be perceived. But it's an internal decision that says, I won't. In this case, I won't have boundaries, right? When we have that painful experience as a child, when our needs aren't met, for instance, this person's needs to have her own space and her, respect for her boundaries, when that wasn't met, she learned not to have them. And part of her, probably unconscious, was saying, I won't have boundaries. She's now in a relationship with a man she loves, and partly she wants to let him in and be in a real close connection and merge and have those lovely experiences. But there are times when she needs to be able to say, no, that's not me, it's not right for me, and so on. But some part of her is saying, no, I won't have boundaries. Not just that I can't,
Right.
right? And this is the lower self. And it's not a pretense. It's self-will. I won't, or I will have, right? So any determination of will that's just for me or protective of me is part of the lower self. Pride, I'm separate from you. I'm better than you. I don't deserve to have these human experiences that other people have. And mostly it really is about fear. Afraid to,
Right.
in this instance, maybe I'm afraid to have boundaries, because if I have boundaries, then you'll leave me or I won't get my needs met. So out of those three things, self-will, pride, and fear, determine so much of our unconscious behavior and our limitations in life.
So, and let me try this. So her mask probably had a little bit of the mask of serenity. Like, I'm going to pull back here and I'm going to let you come in to this, to some degree. And I'll be here with you. And then love, like, okay, I'll let you have this, but you're going to take care of me, right? You're going to give me what I need. So I'm imagining there's these two masks that are showing up in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that I experience the lower self with somebody like this is it's like the mask of serenity, but now it's not here, it's here. And that I'm going to let you come this close, but you're never really going to get me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The lower self is like, you're never actually going to get me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not available.
Not available.
You can come all the way to here, but I'm not available.
You could walk all the way through me,
Right.
but you'll never actually get to me.
Right. And that's what gets in the way of the relationship.
Yeah, of course. Right. It's a very deeply held attitude and experience. And there's two really different versions of that, right? There's you can poke at me, prod me, invade my body, and I'll hunker down inside.
Yeah.
And I'm deep inside here and you'll never actually get to me.
Right.
And then there's I'm going to go away energetically. And we've all known people like that, right? Who either hunker down inside or who disappear. Mm-hmm. And you're talking to them, but you notice their eyes are off in the distance, or their thoughts or their feelings are not really present anymore. Mm-hmm. They've left the building. And it's a skill and ability, right? If you're an infant or a toddler and your parents being invasive, scaring you, you have to find some way to deal with it. So you learn how to do these things. But when they keep playing out as adults, it's not so helpful. It doesn't help us have a truly mutual beneficial relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think lower self is, so I'll say it like this. In my spiritual practice, there is the search for truth, the getting into higher self. There's prayer, there's meditation, there's that kind of experience. It's really maybe chanting, maybe singing, all kinds of ways we can move to the light.
Yeah.
But the most important part of my spiritual practice is working with shadow. That to me, working with, no matter how much you find the light, if you don't deal with this stuff down here, it's not really going to get in. Yeah. You're going to still leave or still going to do this, and so this is one of the most important subjects.
I agree with your understanding. There really are two schools of thought about personal and spiritual growth. There's the transcendent school. We'll just leave all that stuff behind, all that negativity, all that unconscious stuff, all those defenses, just transcend them.
Right.
Right. And I haven't found that that works for me. And most of my patients haven't been able to truly transcend it. The ability to work with it and transform it, to, as you say, pay attention to it, bring it to consciousness, and even more than bring it to consciousness, to actually work through the defenses, to get a grasp, say, for this person who's, has poor boundaries or weaker boundaries than she needs, to understand, oh, this is an option. I'm going to develop this capacity. I'm going to give up my belief that boundaries aren't safe, or and learn how to have them energetically, right, is a whole process. And it involves this working with our defenses and our lower self that, in my mind, in my experience, without that work, we can't let in the higher self. In fact, just thinking of it energetically, these are the barriers, these are the boundaries that are supposed to protect and contain our higher self, the best in us, the vulnerable, creative, unitive parts of us. And to the extent they still exist, they create a barrier.
Right. It's interesting that you were talking about the sort of transpersonal, the work where you kind of just go beyond and let go of those dark places. To me, that's such a spiritual bypass. And this is the problem when we do that is we're going to begin to think that the shadow doesn't exist, that the lower self doesn't exist, that we're above that, and we're going to ignore it now, which empowers it. It gives it room to move now, because you don't even think it's there. And this is why so many gurus or teachers who did lots of prayer and meditation and one with God and end up sleeping with their students, or
acting out,
or doing drugs, or acting, because they don't believe they have a lower self. They're above that now.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think of it as, the hard work. It's not always fun or, easy to dig into our defenses and our negativity, because parts of the lower self are not just, I want to defend myself, but if somebody keeps pushing on us, you want to push back. Part of us may want to hurt them back if they've hurt us, right? And so thinking of myself as a guy who wants to hurt somebody else is not pleasant. But it's pretty universal. If you watch kids, right, often, they want to grab the other kid's toy and hit him over the head with it.
Right.
It's this, not the best part of us, but it's a very common, normal thing to have this desire to push back, to hurt those who've hurt us, to withdraw from those who we don't want, and so on. And until we face those parts and deal with them, right, it creates a shaky foundation, right? Until we've uprooted and worked through and transformed those energetic aspects, we're building on sand, So we need to really clear the foundation to have a solid sense of who we are, what we're capable of, and even just the notion of a range of feelings, that so many feelings get pushed into the unconscious. So many people are taught, it's not, for little boys, it's not okay to cry or show fear, or for little girls, it's not okay to be angry or, to be pushy, to be aggressive. And it's so unfortunate, because once those feelings get pushed aside, now we lose the range of capacity. And one of the things that's been challenging around doing work with the lower self is often re-owning and reclaiming the ability to have the full range of feelings, right? Like for your person who couldn't have her boundaries, to push back, to want to direct you, to perhaps practice being bossy for once, right? She never got to be bossy with her.
Exactly. And that is bringing the lower self into consciousness.
Right? Playing with it and owning it, and not to go act it out, but to do it in a safe environment where it's for the purpose of becoming conscious of it and working through it.
So then if we were to try to describe what the lower self is and how it came about. And I want to say that everything we're talking about today, these are models. We don't know if there really is a lower self or a mask, right? And so But models are really important because they help us understand. If a good model gives us ways to learn how to work with something, like gravity. Yeah. We have a great model for gravity. Is it truth? Don't know, but it works really well. So can you share a little bit about how core energetics sees the lower self?
So in our model, the understanding is an energetic one, that our higher self, the best in us, the unitive place in us that's loving, connective, and vulnerable, has a certain energetic vibration. It's pure, it's flowing, it's harmonious, right? When that's interrupted, when our needs are not met, it's too vulnerable for the small child. It's too threatening. So they have to find some way to take those energetic aberrations and manage them. And we form our defenses, which in an energetic form, the lower self, higher and lower is not maybe the best terminology, but in terms of vibration, it's a lower vibration. It's not as harmonious, it's not as pleasant, it's not as peaceful. Everyone knows when they feel agitated and angry or afraid, right? Those are a different feeling experience. The energy of them is different. Somebody walks into
denser, lower vibration.
Denser, lower vibration. And so the vibration of self-will, pride, or fear is not the same vibration. It's a denser, lower, less pure, less harmonious vibration, right? If we follow that out, of course, the mass, the cover for these two, higher and lower self, is a much less pure, much less harmonious, less coherent vibration, right? It's not a good signal. It can be sickly sweet, or it can be just distorted. As we get farther from the truth, that signal is farther and farther from that harmonious, coherent kind of vibration. Mm-hmm. So in a simple energetic sense, it's a different energy form that's forming a barrier. It's forming a defensive shield, if you will. Yeah.
And so, so the way that I try to think about this is, first of all, so there's all this energy, and we can't have it consciously. It's not okay. So that's one way to think about it.
Certainly for the child.
Yeah.
The child doesn't have a way of processing and making it okay to be so angry at his parents who he loves.
Right. So then that energy gets put into the unconscious. And so I think this is really important. That energy then, the conscious me doesn't have access to that energy anymore.
That's right.
Okay. And I'd like to think that on some level we have a finite amount of energy. That may not be exactly true, but there is some kind of truth to that statement.
Yeah.
And when we take some of that energy because it's not wanted or it's not okay, we don't want to know what to do with it, and we push it off into this place we call the unconscious, we don't even know it's there. It's literally unconscious. We do not have access to it. And it takes energy to hold it there.
That's right.
So that's even more energy we don't have access to.
Yep.
And that energy over there is on some level now a being.
Very busy, and very active.
And it's not working with me. It's working against
Often
me.
working against us.
So we have all this energy we don't have access to. We're using a bunch of energy to hold it there, and it's working against us. I often tell people who are seeing this in their lives, imagine now that you're playing a game of chess, and the person you're playing against, you cannot see. And you don't get to know what moves they're making, but they can see everything about you, and they can see all the moves that you're making.
And they know all your vulnerabilities and what makes you tick.
They know what your game plan is, how it works. They know everything. Yep. They're going to win the game. And so that's what we're bumping up against when we have an unconscious self.
That's right. Yeah, it's so important. People come in. They come in because they're aware that there's something going on that they don't understand or that they know isn't right for them. They're using a substance that they know isn't healthy for them. They're in relationships that aren't healthy for them. They don't have boundaries and they know they should, and they can't figure out why. And you've just explained it, right? We've put this defensive, self-protective part of us in our unconscious, and it thinks it's protecting us, but it's working against us in ways that are very powerful. And it takes so much energy. So many people feel depleted. They have low energy. It's simply because all their energy is going to protecting this being that they've put over here and haven't been ready to face and feel and know is part of them and reintegrate and have all that energy again. Yeah.
So one of the ways that I describe this is a model. And I use this model because it seems to be helpful for the people I'm working with to understand what we're doing. And the way that I describe this is that there are parts of ourself as a child, maybe a 4-year-old part, that starts to get angry about things, wants to be more independent, gets punished for this. And eventually the anger and the desire to have independence may get pushed into the unconscious. It'll become the lower self. It'll have that energy. And so I ask people to imagine that if you had a 4-year-old in front of you who depended on you. Maybe you have children and you can imagine this, or maybe you remember being 4 years old, or you've been around a 4-year-old. But if you look at a 4-year-old who depends on you and you tell them, I don't love you anymore. I don't want you here anymore. I want you to go in that closet and stay there and don't ever come out again. I don't want to know you're here. You're excommunicated. What that would do to a 4-year-old. This would be devastating.
Devastating.
Right?
It would be life-threatening.
It would be life-threatening. And so this is a mythology. I'm just describing this because it helps understand how I perceive this all happens and works. Because the statement of the lower self in the Undefended Self book was, I don't care about anybody else or anything else but me. And how do we get there? And I imagine this, or my experience of this is that when you reject these parts, like this 4-year-old, we push it into the closet, it's gone now. It's going to be devastated. And if it stays in that state of I'm no good and nobody loves me, and it's just going to wither and die. But if it turns around and says, well, if you don't care about me, then I don't care about you. If I don't care about anything else but me, then I can survive. There's this self-will, pride, and it's based on fear. And so that is sort of the way that I try to talk about. Here's now this energy that is formulated around this expression that wasn't okay. Yeah. And it's 4 years old. And the way I experience this is when something gets pushed into shadow, when it gets pushed into the unconscious self, it stops maturing. So this is why a lot of times when we get activated, like this young woman I was working with, when she asked me to step back, and I did, and she started giggling like a 4-year-old, because that was probably about how old she was when this dynamic of can I actually set a boundary came up for her. So these parts don't mature. So we have a lot of immature parts of us over here that don't like us and don't care about us and aren't really working for us. They're working for them. And so this 5 or 4 or 6 or 8-year-old part of me that wants to do drugs because it's pleasurable. I don't care. It's fun. Why wouldn't I do this?
Why wouldn't I do it? Yeah.
And so why wouldn't I have an affair? Why I want to have sex with that woman? Why wouldn't I? Whatever it is. So in doing this work, I try to help people understand we're going back and finding those parts. We're giving these parts a voice. We're beginning to bring them back into consciousness. And I think you were telling me about this the other day. We had a conversation about this isn't about just getting angry or just expression. You want to go into that?
Sure. Yeah, I think partly because of the history in the 60s and 70s, but also the misunderstanding of why we do the physical expression parts and the energetic movements along with these emotional expression exercises, where we're helping somebody to explore and bring to life and embody those attitudes, those feelings that got pushed aside when they were little. That it got labeled as catharsis, or got, the people talked about, oh, I'm just getting out my anger, right? Which, the notion of anger work mystifies me, because the point isn't to get your anger out. It's to become conscious of it, embody it, feel it, know it, own it, and not be separate from it. Which is different than catharsis, or than the getting it out. It's about actually owning it and not being separate from it.
Right.
Of course, none of this is in service of acting it out. I don't want to help somebody have their anger so they can go be mad at everyone in their life.
Right.
It's to reconnect with it so they have the energy of it, and reconnect with what it was defending against. The child who's pushed into the corner or, invaded, who feels angry but can't express it, has tremendous grief and sorrow and pain and other feelings that were not allowed and couldn't then mature. So we have these, openings of the energy system, and, just naming it, even just feeling it in our body often isn't enough. The energetic threshold, it's like turning ice into water, right? You put a light on it and you can see it's ice, and you're shining some light on it and you see it, but that doesn't melt it, right? Until it vibrates enough, until it warms enough, then it will melt. And this is an energetic process. So we have an energetic form, our old feelings that we're separate from, that are now frozen in time and place. We need to thaw them and let them flow again so the energy can be reclaimed.
So this is like when somebody comes in and they are angry. They have anger and they're telling you, I'm so angry at so-and-so, or my partner. I'm angry at my partner, and I can't believe they're doing this. And we get them up to move this anger. The goal is not just to get the anger out. No. The goal is for them to begin to get in touch with, they're not really just angry at their partner. They have a whole childhood dilemma playing out here. They're probably projecting their parents or their older brother or somebody onto their partner. Yep. And we want to help them bring that unconscious child part that's angry into consciousness. So it's about consciously bringing this back into consciousness.
Right. That's a classic thing, that somebody's angry at their boss or they're angry at their partner, and over trivial things, seemingly trivial, right? Maybe really significant things, but often it's some argument about, the same old thing and they don't understand why it gets them so riled up. We help them open up the anger, start to move the feelings, and it turns out, no, it's because it's not just at the partner or the boss, some authority in their life, some person who they counted on let them down in some way, hurt them.
Right.
And so they can open up and be aware, oh, I'm really angry. I've been angry at my mom, my dad, or I picked a partner who's just like my dad or just like my mom, and we're playing out the same event over and over again. And that it is less about the anger than about the feelings that the anger is meant to defend, protect against.
Right. So then you were describing, I just want to put this in a nutshell. So here's this person who goes through stuff as a child. Maybe there's invasion, maybe there's control, maybe there's punishment, maybe there's holding them up too much, like, oh, you're special, and then they have to be special. There's all these different ways we can have these different parts of us. And then we have the mask and the lower self that gets developed through these wounds. Yeah. And you were describing a minute ago how when you get into what could be called catharsis, if you really get into the unconscious self, you get through the anger into the wound underneath, into that the where the real pain is.
The real pain is. Yeah.
I want to say, so I came to see you about 30 some years ago when I was starting my first training.
Right. You were in the
Brennan.
Brennan School.
Which was actually related to CORE.
Right.
Barbara and John Parokos were
colleagues in a way.
Yeah. And so I came to see you, and I didn't even know I needed therapy.
You didn't need therapy. You were a student in this training program.
Yeah. I'm good. And it was a couple of sessions in that you asked me to get up and move some of my energy. And it was so hard to do this. And when I started to really get in touch with the feelings, I think what I said to you was, you don't want me to do this because I will tear this room apart. I will break, you don't want me to go there. Which is saying a lot, right? Here's this guy who didn't think he needed
Doesn't need therapy, but he's going to destroy my office, right? He'll annihilate me.
And so we kind of stopped there. You were great, by the way, at holding space for me, at being a container, at working with me. It kind of makes me feel, I have a lot of love for you and the work we did. So thank you. It's very deep. You probably saved my life. The next time I came in, you got me up and moving again. And I said, all right, screw it. And I went over, you had this sort of foam couch thing, and I got on my knees and I just started pounding on it because that was the safest thing I thought I could do. And I think when I ran to the couch, you were like, whoa. And I pounded, and I was going to kill. And I hit maybe 3 or 4 times really hard, yelling. And then I just collapsed into tears. Here I thought I was just this angry, and really I was just this hurt. It was that much pain underneath that came out. I can maybe cry now. It was so profound.
Feelings are still here. It's amazing how, timeless those feelings can be when you open them back up. Right. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate, that I didn't save your life. Your choice to come and do this kind of work, you would have found somebody to help you. I trust that. But we formed enough of a connection, made it safe enough for you to explore, okay, maybe I do have some anger, and you started to let it out. And it didn't take very long before you burst into tears.
Right.
And that is so much my experience of the difference between the mask, which can go on, blaming and justifying and so on. That just is circular. It never goes anywhere good. The lower self, I hate you, I want to hurt you, right? The primal defenses rarely last more than a few seconds to a minute, right? Because they're real. They're like most feelings. They come in a big wave and they move, and then we're left with, the real feelings, the higher self, vulnerable man, boy who was hurt so badly and has all this grief that's unresolved. It got pushed into the unconscious, and now it can flow again. And you can reclaim all that energy and that range of feelings. You can allow yourself to be angry when it's needed or sad when it's needed, and so on. Yeah. There's an aspect of the lower self that doesn't get as much attention as I think it needs, which is that when we're hurt as children, when we're stressed, when, our needs aren't met, when traumatic things happen, we have to find a way to manage them. And we don't just form these defensive maneuvers that say, I won't feel that. We actually have to apply our physiology and our energy system to making it tolerable. And the way we do that physiologically is we have endorphins. We have these natural opiates that give us a pleasure current, a pleasure rush, right? So like a runner's high, you go running and running and running. Well, running that far isn't pleasurable, but your body says you need to keep outrunning this saber-toothed tiger. Let's have some endorphins. Well, energetically, the pleasure gets attached, gets applied to these difficult situations. And if that happens over time, bad situation, pleasure attached, bad situation, pleasure attached, you end up with pleasure attached to negative situations.
Oh, I love this because I love complexity. I love when we don't know what the answer is. It's hard to describe things. But you brought in the concept of negative pleasure. And I think that's really important. So I'd love it if you want to bring that in some more.
Sure. I'd love to talk about this. I find it fascinating and daunting, and there's so much we know, but so much we don't know about it. To put it in context, when I think about, moving through the mask, it's not one thing, there's layers. And we get down to the bottom of the mask, which is these beliefs, these emotionally charged beliefs that move us into the lower self, which again isn't just one thing, it's many layered. It starts out with, just anger, I hate you, and moves down toward I won't feel and separation, right? I'll stay separate. I won't feel these things. And when we get down to the bottom levels of our lower self, we end up with a certain kind of intention, an intention that says, I won't feel, I won't connect, I won't be all of who I am, I won't love you fully, whatever the negative intention is. And whenever we have a negative intention, there will always be attached to that some pleasure. Now, it may seem a little odd, but when we're hurt, especially when we're children, and this is not all a conscious process, we have to find a way to manage the pain. And one of the ways that we manage that pain is by attaching pleasure to it. On a simple physiological level, we have endorphins, which our body can, if we fall and break a leg, we start pumping out endorphins to help us get through that situation. Whether we're running from a predator or we're in a battle, we have to manage. So our body says, do your best, here's some endorphins for you to help you get through this. On an energetic or emotional level, we do the same thing. We apply pleasure to these painful, traumatic situations. Now, there's nothing inherently pleasurable about those situations. But if you have a painful situation, say, the example you have where the mom is not respectful of the daughter's boundaries, it's painful, it's invasive. And she has this painful situation, her needs aren't met, so she applies some of her pleasure current to tolerate it, to learn how to adapt. Invasion, pleasure. Pretty soon, there's a conditioned response. Just like Pavlov and his dog, ring the bell, feed the dog, ring the bell, feed the dog. Now you have pleasure current attached to a painful or difficult situation. And people are often very uncomfortable talking about this, but so many aspects of where pleasure gets hidden are attached to things that aren't necessarily healthy for us. Right? Addictive behaviors, all sorts of fetishes, all kinds of different experiences that may not be healthy have tremendous pleasure. And so this is an aspect of our defensive system that we need to approach if we're going to bring the unconscious to consciousness. And that actually all that pleasure that's attached to these things, that's our life force. That's the healthiest part of us. That's our physical ability to adapt. It's our emotional ability to adapt, our energetic ability to adapt. And if it's staying in our unconscious or staying attached to things that aren't healthy for us, it's not so useful. We need to reclaim those things in order to have full pleasure.
So, for example, I get angry and somebody triggers me, and then I'm angry and I'm going to get them, and there's pleasure attached to that, right? Is that negative pleasure?
Could be.
Okay.
Right? Anger in and of itself is just an emotion. And if the anger is against injustice, that's not a defense, right? That's just a healthy response.
Would you feel pleasure in having that?
Okay. No.
Right.
Probably not.
Right. Then it's more like I'm justified. I'm not getting pleasure.
No. Then it's just, hey, you're hurting me, and
right.
I want you to stop. Right. If there's actual pleasure, like, I enjoy hurting you. Right. There's some examples where, sadomasochism, that would be an example of people taking pleasure in hurting someone else.
Right.
And they find it stimulating and erotic and very pleasurable. That's what we're talking about.
So, and then the example that I have is somebody who actually took pleasure in being hurt. And this person described to me they liked blood drawing. They liked there's all these sort of what we would call kinks, perhaps, but this person liked being hit, slapped, not just spanked, but like, maybe drawing blood, using razor blades kind of thing was pleasurable to this person. And so diving into the childhood, this person's father was the kind of person who just sat in front of the TV and watched TV and paid no attention to this person at all. And the only time, there were 2 times when she got his attention. One is if he needed a beer. He might say, go get me a beer out of the fridge. And she'd be like, there's this like, And the other time that she got his attention, and this is where she got all of his attention, is if she did something that made him mad. And then he would be in her face, angry, really just like, screaming or yelling or just like pointing a finger and threatening. And in that moment, she got all of his attention. And there was something exciting about that. Scary for sure, but it was exciting.
Right.
It was like all of his attention. That's the only time she got it. So she started to enjoy that scary thing because that's when she got all of his attention. And sometimes he would get so mad, he would punch the wall. And she would say, I wanted that. I wanted that too.
All that energy.
All that energy.
Yeah. Of course, this is even slightly more complicated, right? Children need their parents' attention, right? They wither without it.
Right.
If they can't get the positive attention, they will often try to get the negative attention.
Right.
So the actual attention from the father was pleasurable. The kind of attention she was getting obviously was not fully pleasurable. It was scary and agitating, but it was mixed in with, at least I'm getting some attention. I need that, right? Unfortunately, it also got mixed with all this anger and potential harm. He didn't actually physically hurt her. Right? Now, he could have. That happens too. But her pleasure attachment, her using her pleasure current to manage this complicated situation of her father giving all this anger and rage toward her, becomes a conditioned response. Now she wants that. Now she looks for that. She'll find people who will replicate that for her because she will get pleasure from it. And again, this is a little more complicated. The father's attention might have been pleasurable. The rage, the fear, that might never have actually been pleasurable. When children are actually beaten or neglected, it's not that those things in and of themselves are pleasurable, but we apply pleasure to them to make them manageable, and hence end up with a pleasure attachment.
So then in your earlier description, where like with the person that I worked with, she would find something, how did that pleasure, how did that mechanism work? Is it just like endorphins? Is it just that our system just does it to manage the feelings that we...
There is a very unconscious process, right? You can't, if you go for a long run, you can't tell your body to produce endorphins, right? You don't say, okay, at mile 10, turn on the endorphins. Your body does it for you. Just like most physiological processes, they're unconscious. They're part of the wisdom of our unconscious. All the regulation of your digestive system and your breathing and your heart rate and all that stuff. Your body's an amazing wonder of self-regulation. Well, this is part of it. Right? If you need to survive running from a predator, if you need to survive abusive parents, your body will help you. So it's simply an unconscious physiological process. There are many unconscious emotional and psychological processes as well. These formation of beliefs that we've been talking about, or the formation of emotional conditioning, right? Those are not conscious processes. Thinking about as a kid, oh, now I'm going to decide that it's not safe to reach up for what I want. That it happens.
So if we're good with negative pleasure, as long as we're talking about pleasure,
Yeah.
let's slip into higher self.
Okay. Well, it's a great transition because it's a reminder when we think about the quote lower self or the defenses that they're not separate and discrete from our creative higher self, right? They're an adaptation. They're a way that we manage life's stresses. And that this pleasure current, which gets attached to situations to help us tolerate them, comes directly from our higher self, this adaptive part of our physiology that says, oh, we want to help you survive. We want to help you get through this with as little pain and disruption as possible.
Right.
It's a higher self move, and that the lower self or the mask are just distortions of that defensive, that protective current. Right? The notion that a child might need to protect itself in a threatening situation is healthy if it only lasts for the 15 or 20 minutes or the year or two that they're in that situation.
Right.
The problem is it persists into adulthood, and now we're tilting at windmills. We're fighting every partner because they're like our father, or we're fighting every boss because they're like our mother. And so the higher self is this creative, generative, connective, loving part of us, right? These other parts, we talk about the ego as this manager between the internal, the unconscious, and the outer conscious world. And if we don't have one of those, we don't have an ego, if we can't manage our impulses, if we can't manage to navigate between our internal world and the external world, it's really hard to get by. You can't have a job. You won't show up on time. It's hard to have relationships because you are constantly in a flux between your internal impulses and the outer world. But the ego itself can't do these creative, generative, connective, or loving things. It's not within its capacity. So the higher self is that capacity in all of us to be loving, to be connective, to be creative. And it involves being invulnerable too. Of course, to love is to be vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I think one of the challenges in personal growth work in general, and core energetics particularly, is that sometimes the defenses get too much attention. You know, if you look at John Paracas's book on core energetics, or so much of the writing about what therapy is, it all focuses on the problems and the defenses and what went wrong.
Right.
There's very little time and support and encouragement for how do we support and connect and let the higher self flourish, which, to be clear, is that's where the healing happens.
Right.
Right. It's not. When you said, I saved you, no, I didn't save you. If your higher self got you to see me, and our higher selves colluded together to help you reconnect with your own energy and your true nature. And that's what the higher self is, what does the healing. Yeah. So
you're bringing, this is what's sort of interesting, right? Is that it's really about higher self, right? But we spend so much time working on lower self and mask and wounds and feelings. And as you said, I notice also in John's book and anybody's book, they really focus on those things. And it's hard to define. It's hard to can you say more about that?
Well, I'll extend what you said. It is really hard to define. Words don't really capture, I mentioned loving, connective, unitive, creative, right? Those are hard words to define, right? The experience of love is so large that words don't capture it. That's why we have poets and why we have artists, and why we have musicians, and why that's so important, because they're capturing the essence of something that words will tend to fall short of. And so, like in that example where you work through your defenses and you sob and you feel this grief, it didn't end there, right? There was a connective moment. We stood together. I remember you brightening up and feeling more alive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nature of this. There's a sense of aliveness and vibrancy and,
Self-love.
love,
Self-love.
self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is definitely a big part of connecting to higher self.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that I won't attempt to define it much more than that because the words will fall short. But I assume that most of your listeners have probably had some kind of unitive experience. That's part of what draws them to this show. If they haven't had the experience, they've been longing for it. Something in them wants it. They know there's something more possible. There's something beyond this individual, separate self of a physical body. It plays out, of course, in our loving relationships or in creative pursuits that we start to feel part of something larger.
Mm-hmm.
It's this beautiful, expansive, loving experience that we're all longing for.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the nature of why we do this work. It's what's important about this work. In fact, the whole notion of learning to do this kind of work is really about being connected to and centered in and grounding in your own higher self. It's not about some intellectual understanding of how defenses work. That will only take you so far.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give an example, a sort of philosophical perspective that I have that I'm going to talk more about at another time.
Mm-hmm.
My experience in unitive states is that I start to feel like I'm getting in touch with that state of love and connectedness, that oneness, and yet I still have a sense of self that's separate from that. So I've come to states where I felt like I was losing myself in that experience, but then didn't lose myself in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in those moments, I felt like I was, in whatever search for truth I'm on, whatever search for the answers, the meaning of life kind of thing, I felt like I was getting a download, like this is it. And just when I thought I was getting the answer, it stopped. I was still in this state. It wasn't like it ended and I fell down. It's like I'm still in this open state, but I was not able to go that next step. And my interpretation of that is that the truth is unity. The truth is oneness. That my story is that we're all made up of consciousness, and consciousness is creating the illusion of separation so that awareness and experience can happen. And that if the illusion of separation didn't exist, then that also wouldn't happen. There wouldn't be. So that's my story. And that higher self is kind of like that. So truth only exists in duality. If you need not truth for truth to be here, you need it. That's how these things work. You can't have good without bad. They don't exist. So the closer you get to truth, if truth is oneness, the more there is no truth. It's a paradox. That's how I experience it. And so I learned then that if I want to find truth, I may not find it. But if I want to head towards it, if I want to go in the right direction, the way I get there is by moving away from that is not truth. And so I think maybe that's what's happening, like with John's book.
Yeah.
Right? Or in other books about this, where it's so hard to define this thing. It's sort of elusive. It's just like truth. And so maybe the best way to head in the direction towards that is to work away from lower self and mask and these things.
I think that's a great understanding of why we're doing the work in this way, how it works, that the mask is the least close to truth. the lower self is closer, but still not as true as this unitive experience, the loving, connective, unitive experience. And that as we move farther and farther down that, right, there are certainly lots of mystical traditions that talk about the levels of the unitive. And I don't know which ones I've actually achieved, right? I know I've peaked my consciousness into that experience, and I was still there, even in those moments of, everything's one and perfect the way it is. I hadn't disappeared yet, so I don't know about that other part about, it's interesting because it just makes me think about the unitive fields. We're listening to, Roger Penrose talk about the electron field, that, we move from an electron is connected to each atom separately, to a Bose-Einstein condensate, how we do supercomputers and how our bioelectronic system actually communicates, where the electrons are free floating. They're not connected to any one atom. They're just floating along, carrying information, to, there's only an electron field. Electrons only manifest as a temporary moment in that field, just like you and I are manifesting as temporary moments in this field that we might call love or the unitive, and that's the only reality, is the field of love, or of what this unitive experience.
Why are we just temporary?
I don't know that I expect we're not temporary.
Okay.
I think that that experience, those experiences I've had, where I've touched the unitive, left me with very little anxiety about death. I don't fear death the way I might.
I have the same experience.
You have the same experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's what, why medicine journeys can be so valuable for people who are fearing death. It's been shown to be true.
It is,
that they help. And I think this is one thing they do. Those journeys help us touch the unitive, and then it reminds us, your physical body isn't all of who you are. You will exist beyond, or something happen, right?
Right.
Consciousness goes beyond what the physical body is. Don't worry so much about it.
Exactly. Death is the next great adventure, is how I see it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but I don't assume it's bad or nothing. I assume it could be the next best thing since sliced.
Yeah. And maybe nothing is.
And maybe
that's what is supposed to, maybe that is the next great adventure.
Maybe nothingness is the next.
So,
yeah.
Something else too, as long as we're talking about higher self, and this is something that when I first started studying this was so interesting, is that higher self goes into shadow, right?
Yeah.
That it's not like higher self is this thing that exists outside of lower self and shadow. It's like you can become ashamed of the good parts of you and not push them into lower self.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
Well, yeah. That's why I like using the higher self, lower self mask model instead of shadow, because shadow incorporates all of the unconscious, which includes the higher self.
Right.
When a child is told that their beautiful, loving feelings are not accepted, that's one of the things that they will compartmentalize off. It hurts, very painful to not have your love received, to not have your excitement received, to not have your beautiful feelings in your body, that your body's beautiful, have those things received. And the message is, no, don't have those feelings, don't express that way. And so that gets hidden and put away into the unconscious too.
Right.
These beautiful, loving, connective, creative feelings. It's so sad, right? How many children get through school believing they're creative and that they're artists and that they're genuinely brilliant, right? It's so rare anymore. And everyone could feel like a creative, beautiful artist. Art isn't for the specialists, the only the few who get to go to art school, right? That's so sad. And yet in our culture, it's very common. So to think of the higher self as often the part that's most covered up. It's the most vulnerable part of us, our loving, tender, creative self. That's the part we're most protective of. And what a sad thing that all this energy is going into protecting it. And then it's not accessible to us. We're not sharing it with the world. The world can't touch it the way it needs to grow. And ultimately, it's a loss for everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew somebody who, still know somebody, but who was very curious and vulnerable and willing to learn for themselves by being curious. And they weren't stupid but their curious vulnerability came off from people who were a little more shut down and as being naive and maybe not stupid, but not smart. And it was interesting to watch that experience, the judgment of how could you be so naive? And I watched this person start to shut down that sort of curious vulnerability and turn into a little harder, more. And so this is an example of that, right?
Yeah.
That it goes into shadow. It goes into unconscious.
Conscious. Yeah. 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 There's a really common effect. Perhaps one of our parents is more loving than the other, right? And so say your mother's the really loving one, but your father's hard to connect with. He's more aloof or he's always at work. And so we kind of take our mother's love a bit for granted, may turn toward the father who's less available and keep wanting his love. And by comparison, we then devalue the love that we have. And we may even feel a little bit ashamed of it. Oh, it's not okay to revel in and accept that. What I really want and need is this unavailable thing. It's one of those common examples of where we begin to feel ashamed or feel diminished about the love we actually do have in our life.
Right.
Yeah. Judge it or push it away. And yeah.
Well, I appreciate how difficult it is to define higher self. And I do think one of the ways that I get in touch with it for myself is through self-love, which is not simple, easy.
Not so easy. Sure.
It's really interesting to dive into and work with learning to love yourself. And sure, standing in front of a mirror and saying, I love you, that can be hard for people, and it is a good step, but you can go so much deeper into that.
Those examples you gave of all the aspects that we push aside, the child who feels told he can't be, go live in the closet, right? Well, that's what we're doing to those aspects of ourself that we deem unacceptable, our anger, our sexuality, our fear, our joy.
Right.
And self-love is only to accept those parts back and to see them as beautiful and normal and healthy, and maybe they need to grow up, but they're still beautiful and wonderful. And it's so much a part of what it is to love.
Yeah.
If we can't love ourselves, we can't accept our own foibles and our own, undeveloped parts. How can we expect to accept somebody else and all of their undeveloped parts?
Right.
Yeah. So it's really part of the practice. And as you say, just a positive affirmation in the mirror is not the same as truly being willing to love aspects of ourselves that we've pushed into the unconscious that are not the most savory parts.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to say that isn't a good first step.
It's important. And in this balance of, we don't want to just focus on the mask and the lower self. Right. We also need our higher self. We need that part in order to do that, right? In order to face up to these scary or, intimidating parts of ourselves, we're going to need all the courage and love and support and patience. So finding prayers and meditation and ways of connecting are important.
Right.
Yeah.
So then for me, in this conversation, I would say that it's about having the awareness, at least, of unit of consciousness. Having the awareness that the separation between me and you is kind of an illusion, and that on some level, every person in this dualistic world has to be here. You can't have some evil, bad person without also having the Dalai Lama. You have to have both. That everybody has to be here. Everybody here is on some level perhaps playing out their role in the evolution of consciousness. And that, as a Buddhist would say, you have to learn to love everyone because we're all coming from that same unit of consciousness.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean you have to like everyone, but yeah. So Ken and I had another conversation I wanted to add here. We talked a bit about the nature of reality and consciousness from the core energetics perspective. We talked about what it's like working with a core therapist and what the core energetics training program is like and how to choose the right program if you're interested. So if you're ready, 1, 2, 3, go. I'm just curious about philosophy, because that's really what turns me on. I'm not a scientist. I'm a philosopher.
Huh.
I love reading science. I love backing it up with science as much as I can. That's really important, but I'm more interested in it for the philosophy than the science. And so I'm just curious.
In the old days, they were called science philosophers, right? The days before experimental methods were what they are now, they were unified, science and philosophy.
Right.
Right now, we've somehow made this arbitrary separation, which I don't think is fair. So
it's not useful.
It's not as useful.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
a way in which they inform different aspects of what reality is.
So Ken, what is reality?
What a challenging and interesting question. I would hardly pretend to say I know what reality is.
Me too.
I think the philosophy and the science behind the kind of work that we do, energy and consciousness work, touches both realms, right? There is science about what energy is and how fields operate and how time is an illusion and so on and so forth. And then there are aspects way beyond what our science can imagine yet. Even the notion of what consciousness is, science can't explain yet. It's an aspect.
We may never be able to.
We may never be able to. That's right. It's fascinating, but philosophically, the notion that the universe is an expanding energetic process, and that our evolution, our experience of becoming more conscious is like an individual microcosm of that expansion. That's how I understand reality, that the unitive, the divine, the forces of love are expanding out into the universe, into the darkness, into the unconscious, to illuminate, to create unity, to create the oneness that is.
So it's creating the illusion of separation to create oneness?
So perhaps unity had to create an illusion of separation in order to explore itself, in order to infuse the universe with light, with unification. But whether it's the universe expanding with light and energy, or whether it's our individual growth process, I see them as very similar. That our own process of evolving our consciousness, of becoming more conscious, of unifying these different aspects of us, is like the light and the penetration of the divine spark, if you will, out into the cosmos. And that, to me, is the nature of reality. That's how I understand life, why we're here, that we're here to do this very thing, to become more conscious, to become closer to that unitive field.
So consciousness is sort of the beginning? Is this where this comes from?
Yes.
Okay, so consciousness is this thing in the beginning that creates the illusion of separation for maybe for us to learn, which maybe, and you mentioned that it's almost the same thing, like we're a mirror of the bigger process, or the process is a mirror of us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's consciousness becoming aware.
Yeah, becoming aware and reunifying itself. We have these experiences of ourselves as separate, or parts of us as separate from us, that we need to reunify, and that consciousness is reunifying. It's moving from the dualistic, the either or, the good, the bad, into the unitive.
What do you know? I mean, I'm so curious because I love philosophy. Where does that start? Does it start with unity?
It's so interesting, right? It's a chicken and egg thing. Was there a beginning? Is there an end? We talk about the physical universe as having this cosmic event, the Big Bang. Well, what was before that, right? Was consciousness just already in the unitive, and it made this decision to say, oh, I need to experiment with myself. I need to create a physical universe in which to have that experience. I have no idea. That's way beyond me. That's probably as far as my imagination can go. There's enough to know I don't know about that.
Sure.
And that my own experiences of the unitive are very powerful and important to me, but very limited in that sense. I'm not one of those cosmic travelers who can tell you a lot of stories about my trips to Jupiter and beyond in the cosmos. I guess I tend to be on the sciencey end of things and less the cosmic philosopher end of things.
So then consciousness perhaps creates duality. And for the purpose of having awareness or experience, or for awakening, or for making the unconscious conscious, or something like that.
That feels like a purpose I can identify with and relate to. It's certainly what my own practice is about, how I work with people when they come to see me. What I'm trying to teach students is about, how do you make the unconscious conscious? Why would we do that? Well, because there's lots of reasons. It makes your life better, but how do we do that is always the question. And that, there's been lots of advances in methodology and understanding of, even just in the human physical organism, of what the unconscious is, how the brain works, how the living matrix, all the connective tissue and the bioelectronic system that communicates between cells. That's not a conscious process, but it's carrying information flow in our body and regulating our systems all the time. How that works, how to work with it, why it's important to work with it physically as well as emotionally and psychologically. And so when, if we're talking about consciousness becoming more conscious, moving from unconsciousness to consciousness, that's how I understand certainly the flow of evolution and really our purpose here. It helps me to have a sense of purpose. Why would, life's difficult. Life is not easy. So if we don't have a sense of purpose here, it makes it much harder.
And so that's like the next question, right? What is the meaning of life? And I like what you just said, and I'm just going to throw in, I think that all of the meaning that life has for us, we give it that meaning. We don't know. I mean, that's kind of what you're saying. We don't really know.
Don't really know.
And so we find a way, and I love that journey. I love the philosophically and including science and everything, trying to understand why is this here? Not because I think that I'm going to find the answer, mostly because as I do this journey, I discover the sort of nature of reality in terms of understanding that it may not be the way we perceive it from the consensus reality perspective. Mm-hmm. That when we start to realize, it kind of behaves like a dream, or it kind of behaves like a simulation, or it kind of behaves like this, and we can then live more fully, use the experience differently. It might have different meaning from that perspective. But I'm curious, where do you go from? How do you hold that?
Well, being more focused on the science, I tend to focus more on the how than the why. Mm-hmm. I think they're both important questions. When I think about how the human organism work, or how our psychology, our consciousness works, I tend to focus on that and think about how does it get off track? How do we help it get back on track? And to that end, the focus of my understanding is, what we can know, what we do currently know about our perception of reality, how our body as an organism processes information, what blocks it from processing that information effectively, and so on. Though there is this why question, well, why is this even important? Why bother? Why go through all these difficult experiences? And on the how level, it's explainable because it makes our lives better, right? I have the experience, you've had the experience, many people have had the experience that learning to make their unconscious conscious, learning the how of their own psychology makes their life better, even if they don't know why, right? But then there is this overarching question of, well, why are we here? And to me, those are inseparable, because I'm ready to accept that this is why we're here, that to learn, to grow, to evolve consciousness, the evolution of consciousness is a purpose.
Right.
It's enough of a purpose for me. It's meaningful. It makes all those struggles and those challenges and the willingness to go through difficult feelings and thoughts and so on. It makes it have a certain meaning. Yeah. How about for you? Do you have anything you would add or feel that's different for you?
I tend to think of, I like the dream model. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about this a lot, and I'm going to continue talking about this. Uh-huh. But the idea that this is consciousness dreaming. It creates the illusion, just like we do in a nighttime dream. Mm-hmm. In a nighttime dream, we create the illusion in our consciousness, something that's not real, but it looks, feels like reality. And our experiences, our emotional experiences feel real. And the person that you're talking to in the dream feels like somebody other than you. But they're not. It's all made up of you. It's all your consciousness bringing the unconscious conscious. Mm-hmm. And so I like that model. It feels very similar, that this is consciousness becoming aware of itself. And so this illusion we call duality, great construct, because it gives us something to experience. It gives us something to be aware of. And so I feel like my purpose in life is to express this consciousness. I am consciousness becoming aware of itself, just like the grand thing, this consciousness becoming aware of itself. Now I'm doing it here. Mm-hmm. So I kind of agree with you, but that's sort of the model that I like, that I am consciousness becoming aware of itself. And I'd like to do that not sleepwalking through life. I'd like to do that being awake and as aware as possible rather than just going through life unconsciously.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing, and this is so interesting because I don't even know if this is real, and I don't think that matters. I'm having the experience of aliveness. And to me, that is one of the defining things about consciousness in duality. Because if I'm not alive, I'm not here, I'm not conscious. I assume, I don't know where I go, I don't know what happens, but I have a sense that my soul leaves the avatar of the body and the body dies and I'm not Mark Wald anymore. And so feeling my aliveness, I think, is really important. Not going dead, not just scrolling on the phone, not just avoiding life, not just avoiding feelings, to step into and have the experience. Is there a purpose in that in terms of consciousness evolving? I can attest to that's probably true. But regardless, I think aliveness is the one thing we can say is different or important or special in this world.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's so true. I mean, to value the aliveness, to celebrate it, to feel grateful for the opportunity to be here. In some ways, it's a privilege, right? We have enough food and shelter, and our lives are good, so we can have gratitude for this aliveness. It would be hard for somebody who doesn't have enough food to eat, or who's really struggling on a basic security level, to have that, and yet that's a big part of what existence on this planet has been, the struggle just for survival. And can we think of that as part of the evolution of consciousness, that consciousness goes from, infusing everything, every atom, and those atoms need to get more complicated and work against entropy to give a sense of what life is, right? From the first single-celled organism all the way up to us, where we even have self-awareness and other signs of consciousness that the rock or the single-celled organism doesn't have, though they do show signs of some consciousness, right? The single-celled organism can move away from predators and move toward food and move toward the light and remember things. And
right.
It's not an emergent phenomenon. It didn't just come because we're so great.
Right.
And yet it's this wonderful thing to celebrate and to enjoy and appreciate while we have it, because we don't know how long we're going to get to have it.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm not one to fear death and cling to this version of life because of those unitive experiences, because of my sense of impermanence, that it's both about enjoying life while we're here and celebrating it, but not clinging on to it.
Right.
I'm not going to be the guy who does all the latest treatments for every ailment. As a doctor, I've seen where that leads. It's not a good place.
Right. I agree. I'm the kind of person who, if I reach the point where I'm not able to feel my aliveness anymore, I'm just sort of existing, I'm good. I can pull the plug.
Yeah.
And yet I'm not clinging to life because I'm afraid of dying, but I want to be as alive as I possibly can.
Make the most of it. Be as conscious and alive while we're here, because it's a gift, isn't it?
It is.
To feel that wonderful aliveness and a gift to be able to support others feeling more alive. Right? That's really the nature of that's how I know when we're moving closer to the higher self. There's more aliveness there. There's more vibrancy. It's more colors are a little brighter. The feelings are sharper.
It is. It's really true. I want to say to everybody, I hope that you're enjoying this journey, that you're enjoying our conversation, and that you're getting a lot out of this method, this model of engaging with self and growth and becoming alive, awake, and aware is profound. And it definitely changed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined when I first went down this path. And so I highly recommend it for those of you who are interested in deepening your understanding of self and aliveness and awakeness, and want to not be unconsciously going through life bumping into the same things over and over again. And so finding somebody to work with there, and actually I'm going to let you speak to that, because I haven't been to the new website, but I know they have websites where you can find core therapists. But also, for those of you who are interested, maybe you're a step down the road. Maybe people who are listening to this are therapists or body workers or doctors who want to engage in learning how to help people on this path. There are schools. And so, Ken, I'd love for you to chat a little bit about where people can go to find. I mean, you can reach out to me or Ken. Obviously, I work via Zoom. I'm assuming you do too.
Yep.
But where else can people find somebody to work with? And especially, tell us a little bit about the school, because I loved going to the school, and I also assisted you during a 4-year training program. It's such a powerful experience.
Sure. Well, just to put this in the context of, the personal growth scene, that core energetics is one of many body-centered psychotherapies, but it's a particular one, right? In terms of being truly holistic, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And really having as complete a system as I've seen. And I'm a inveterate reader and studier. I keep looking for what's available and what's out here and what's new, and it still satisfies me that that I've picked a good model that is as good a structure to understand each of these aspects: the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, and how they tie together. So in that sense, core energetics is, it's particular. It's not for everyone, but it's a great model. There are now 14 odd institutes, 4-year training programs in 9 or 10 countries around the world. So depending on where you are, you would, search in your country and see if there's a training institute. And most of the institutes have a website that would have a list of practitioners. If they don't have a list of practitioners, they would have contact information. Ours website would have an email you could write to and say, hey, I'm looking for a practitioner. If you can see somebody in person, much better, because there's something about not only the relationship, but the physical interaction, as well as having a safe place to go and play with the movements, the expression, and so on. If you can't do that, if there's no one in your area, then going online is a reasonable alternative. We've gotten better at it. It's not the same, but it's an alternate.
Thanks to COVID.
Thanks to COVID.
Actually, I had to learn how to do this work.
That's right.
Via Zoom. So.
Yep.
But I agree, in-person work, I much prefer it as well.
It's much better. More satisfying for both people. But if not possible, then online sessions are a way to start, and you can find a practitioner. Then it's not local, right? You can see somebody anywhere in the world, time zone dependent. If you get past the point of wanting to explore your own personal work, you might go to a workshop or some other group experience, because having interactions with other people ups the potential for growth and energy and building community, and it's very exciting. And also may give you a taste of whether you want to learn more about this work yourself. If you want to learn more, then there are many 1- and 2-year programs that are introductory. There's one in the Portland area that's gone for a few years, an introductory program, and there are lots of them around the country, around the world, that are a chance to get a flavor for this and get a taste, see if it fits, how it works for you. If you then really, decide, I want to learn how to do this as a practitioner, I'm really, invested like you were, then you find one of the 4-year training programs. And that's the school that I run. It's a 4-year training program. It's really meant to take people who want to be practitioners. It's really not meant just as a personal growth thing.
Right.
So we have taken a few people who weren't sure, they didn't already have a practice, but they were leaning that way, and I've opened it up to consider. And some of those people have turned out to be great practitioners. Right. And some people who thought they wanted to be practitioners decide they don't ultimately. So I'm letting go of control of that.
Right.
But the 4-year training helps not only the personal work that gets somebody ready to be able to handle the kinds of difficult situations and painful feelings and the transference. Right? When people work with the therapist for years, they will start to transfer their own feelings and recreate the situations from their childhood. That's a natural part of it, to be able to learn how to handle all those things and to do it physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. And there's few experiences in life. I owe so much to my training with John and with the other teachers who helped me. And I continue learning through this process. It's a two-way street. By getting to be a teacher, I'm a learner. I have to keep evaluating this material, reimagining how it's going to reach people, meeting people where they're at. It's very exciting. It's, as you know, it's very satisfying. Yes. And we get to do this work for our own growth as well as for the people who come to work with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just want to say the school, I talked about this in an earlier conversation with my daughter where I talked about my process of getting here and doing the Brennan training program and how life-changing this was. And this kind of school where you're not just book learning and you're not just talking, you're actually getting to do sessions with the teachers, you're getting to do in front of your peers. You learn to be really vulnerable. You get to do sessions on each other. You learn experientially, and that is profound. It's challenging, but it's profound.
That's right.
It's
moving from our individual work to group work where, we're more exposed and it's brings up other things to a training where it's very vulnerable to expose yourself in a setting where you're supposed to be the professional who has the answers. And in fact, no, we were all working this out together.
Yeah. So yes, for anybody who's interested in learning more about this, to be a practitioner, I highly recommend looking into that. If you're and you could go to any school for that. When I went to Brennan, I went from here to New York for training. So I flew across the country. When I went to CORE, initially it was in Mendocino. And then, so you can find a training near you, but you could also come to Portland, Oregon and train with Ken, who's an amazing teacher. You are quite
Thank you,
good.
Mark.
Yeah.
And the different programs have a different flavor.
Yes.
The New York program is vastly different than my program. They're, not that one's better than the other. Right. I have my biases, of course, but interviewing with a couple different programs would make sense. So you get a sense of what the emphasis is, who the mentors you're going to connect with are, and knowing that, there are people who travel from New York to come here and people from here who've gone to New York because it's a better fit. And just like with a personal work or the training program you have, the fit is so important, that it feels right to you, that the teachers are speaking a language that makes sense to you, and that you can love the work, your own work, and learn to love yourself through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, thank you. It's been really incredible. I hope we find a reason to do another series of some kind together. It's been great hanging out with you and talking, and I really appreciate the opportunity to bring CORE to the world in this way as well.
Thank you. It's been great getting to hang out with you and talk about these things in detail. And, and I hope you can feel our love for this work, right? Core Energetics has been a great thing for us, and I hope it offers you some growth opportunity and more pleasure, love, and healing in your lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll stop here. And thank you all for joining us. It's been a great series. And remember, be good to you. Hey, Ken, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to stop recording yet.
No?
Because I have another question I'm going to ask. The Crack Between the Worlds is conceived and hosted by Mark Wald. Produced, engineered, and edited by Lloyd Lemmerman. Music composed by Kindly. A Turning on the Lights production. For updates, visit Crack Between the Worlds and our Instagram @The Crack Between the Worlds.